Welcome to day 24 of Let's Get Exam Ready. Today our focus is on question 2 of paper 3. There are two possible questions that will appear for question 2. They're both about ethics, but they both have a different focus. The first possible question is asking you to read the stimulus and identify and describe the ethical considerations that the researcher did apply in the study. And the second part of the first question is asking you to consider what other or further ethical considerations could have been applied in the study. So the first possible question is all about the ethical considerations that were during the study, that were either mentioned in the study that were applied, or what could have been. Maybe these weren't mentioned, but using your knowledge of ethical considerations, you should be able to explain other ethical considerations that could have been applied in the study. The second possible question is asking you to think about after the study has finished. What ethical considerations are important when we are reporting the results? So when the study has finished and we're writing our report findings, what ethical considerations are important in this stage? And when our findings are being applied to real life situations, what ethical considerations are important then? So this second question is a little bit trickier because it's not something we usually think about in psychology. But it's important to remember that even after the study has finished, as researchers in psychology, we still have ethical considerations to take in consideration for our participants. For question 2, when you're reading the stimulus, read the stimulus thinking about your ethical considerations for humans. Highlight or underline anything in the stimulus that you think is relevant to any of these ethical considerations. The first possible question for question 2 is broken down into two parts, and we must address both parts of the question. Our response for the first part can only gain a maximum of 3 marks, and the second part is where the other 3 marks come from. So to score 6 marks, you have to address both parts of the question. So really you're aiming to make 6 different points. And you can see here an example of a point that I've made about an ethical consideration and how I have linked it to the stimulus to make sure that I obtain a full mark for this point. I'd need to do this 3 times for ethical considerations that were applied in the study, and then 3 times again for ethical considerations that could be applied to the study. The second possible question for question 2 is asking you to think about ethical considerations when you report your results and when the results are applied into real life. Again, it's in 2 parts and we have to address both parts of the question to score the full 6 marks. So for the first part about reporting the results, you might think about the ethical considerations of the participants still having the right to withdraw their data from your results, even after the study has finished. You could also discuss the idea of confidentiality and how when you're reporting the results, it's really important to make sure that all details of your participants are completely anonymous. And you may also discuss the idea of how, when you're reporting the results, it's still important to make sure you think about how you protect your participants from harm. These are ethical considerations that are important during the study, but they're also important when you're reporting your results, when the study has finished. When thinking about ethical considerations for applying findings, it's really important that the results of research are valid and credible. That means that they're not inaccurate and we're not using results from studies that are actually wrong and possibly applying them to real life situations when actually the results aren't even correct. And as the researcher, it's my ethical responsibility to make sure that I check the validity and credibility of my results before I report them, so I am confident that the results I'm reporting are valid or credible. We use the terms validity for quantitative research, experimental research, and we use the term credibility for qualitative research. So try to use the correct term in relation to the data in the stimulus that's being provided to you. Researchers also have an ethical responsibility to think about possible researcher bias and how this may affect their results. And if it has, therefore, this questions whether the results can and should be applied to real life situations. Researchers can also think about the extent to which the results can be generalized to other situations and other people. And again, these are ethical considerations that can be taken into account when applying the findings from the stimulus in the study provided to real life settings. It's a great idea to practice paper 3 questions as much as you can before the exam. And if you're looking for practice questions, or if you'd like to have your practice questions reviewed and be provided with valuable feedback, reach out to Diploma Insights and register now for a free tutoring session. Tomorrow we continue to look at paper 3 and move on to look at question 3.